Good morning, my friends. My name is Elisha Christopher, and I am incredibly honored to be here with you this morning, to be invited into your community and to share with you. One of the things that I do everywhere that I speak with every community that I connect with is I always like to start with breath and an invitation for us to just connect wherever we are, wherever you are, whenever you're seeing or hearing this. So I invite you to begin by just an exhale and then take a deep breath in and let go. And again, deep breath in and let go. And together, one more deep breath in and let go. Everywhere I go, I always like to begin just with a moment of shared breath, because I believe in even a simple practice of sharing breath together, even across distance, that it creates a moment of connection for us. And when we can quote the master teacher Jesus, who said, "Where two or more are gathered, there I am also." And what he means by that, or what I interpret by that, I take from the work of Lynne McTaggart, who's an author and researcher, and she wrote the book, The Power of Eight. And in that book, the basic idea is that whenever a group of people focus on the same thing at the same time, something more becomes available. A healing potential becomes available, a sense of deep connection becomes available, and opportunities and possibilities open up from our collective focus that is a greater power than we have individually. And so even a moment like sharing in a breath brings us into a moment of collective focus. Wherever we are, we're sharing in a moment of attention together. And on the same note, one of the things that I am incredibly excited about is that our Centers for Spiritual Living communities, many of us, have been participating in our sort of co-created themes that we share across our communities on Sunday mornings. And along the same lines as I was just speaking, the reason that I love this is because it means that all of our centers, many of the members of the Centers for Spiritual Living, are all contemplating similar ideas every week, every month, as we churn through our shared outlines and our shared themes that we then each get to speak to from our own unique angles. And I believe that in doing that, again, we are beginning to bridge and create a sense of shared community, a sense of shared mind, a sense of shared potential that emerges from our collective focus. And I also believe that that is exactly what we are witnessing in the world around us right now. As COVID-19 began to spread around the planet, one of the things that I began speaking to was that this is a remarkable opportunity to tap into the collective power of human consciousness. That there is an idea, even if it's not the highest evolutionary thought, there is an idea that has captivated and captured the attention of the human consciousness, of our collective mind. And in that shared attention, I believe that there's room for something to emerge that we couldn't see before, or that perhaps we weren't available to before. And so it's in the container of COVID that in the past few weeks, in the last month in the United States, that the explosion of the Black Lives Matter movement around George Floyd's death and the bringing to light the systems of systemic racism and oppression that have been existing in this country, that we are finally in a space where we are ready to speak to what is not working in order for us to bring about a world that works for all. We in Centers for Spiritual Living for years now have been claiming our global vision of a world that works for everyone. And one of the things that I believe is sort of lost from our teaching, that I believe Ernest Holmes and many of the founders of New Thought taught incredibly powerfully, was the power of denial, was the power of speaking to the things that we see that are not working, of speaking to that which we see in the world, which is out of alignment with our vision, which is out of alignment with truth, which is out of alignment with that which we are seeking, and that we speak to it, that we claim our awareness of it, and move it to a place where it does not have power, so that then in its place we can speak to that which we are seeking, to that which we are expecting and asking to see into the world. Ernest Holmes says that trained thought is much more powerful than untrained thought. And in that awareness, I believe that we in Centers for Spiritual Living and that we in New Thought, who are in a culture and a practice of training our minds to teach ourselves how to think, how to explore the universe, how to look at the world from a place of metaphor, from a place of metaphysic, that in that awareness, that we have the opportunity to participate in the collective consciousness right now, and that we must engage the power of our word. The topic today across our CSL themes is mindful speech, and my topic today is speak your truth even if your voice trembles, because it is in that tremble that there is power. It is in that trembling, in that vibration of truth as we speak it into the world, that we engage the power of creation. And it is a deep principle of science of mind that we teach the power of our word. We teach spiritual mind treatment because speaking word, speaking vibration into form, into matter, into our experience is what we do. That we take thought and we speak it into word and we expect that it demonstrates and that it manifests into the world. And right now, in our nation, in our culture, in our civilization, the power of our word is most important. Dr. King said that the most appalling thing to him is not the actions of the so-called bad people. He says it's the silence of the good people. That we, especially in the New Thought movement, many of us come from privileged backgrounds, that those of us who are engaged in Centers for Spiritual Living, we must be willing to rise up in this time and stand for the vision that we say we have been holding of a world that works for all, and that we each individually must be willing to become the voice of truth, to become the voice of possibility, to become the voice that stands up and speaks directly to that which we see that is not working, and then in its place, speak of the dream, speak of the vision. We must speak up. We must stand for the values that we know are right. We must use our votes. We must use our speech. We must use our actions to move our vibration and our truth into the world. And that silence in moments like this is choosing the side of the oppressor. That not participating actively and engaging our creative power, the power of our word, the power of our truth, the power of our willingness to declare what must be so in order for it to be in alignment with our values. We people who have trained our minds to use the power of thought for creation, we must be the ones who stand up and speak truth to illusion, to speak truth to the reality that is out in front of us. You know, for a long time in my upbringing and my training in science of mind, I always heard the terms or the idea that God is perfect, that the universe is perfect, that the law is perfect, and that everything is perfect, that God is good. And many times throughout my life, I've had difficult experiences show up. I know that many of us have had hard times. We've had health challenges. We've had difficulties in our finances. We have these things that happen in the world that we see around us. And we look at the TV, we see the news, we see the environment, we see so many things taking place around us. And we say, how can this be good? How can this be perfect? How can this be ... And I had a great realization last year as I was contemplating some things in my own life, as I was contemplating what I was seeing in the world around me. And I had this awareness that, oh, the law is perfect in that it always demonstrates exactly what we put into it. that the world that we see, that the society that we are creating, that the life, that the health, that the experience that each one of us is creating is a perfect reflection of what is going on inside of us, is a perfect reflection of who we are, of what we believe, of what we think, of what we perceive, of what we expect to see, of what we perpetuate, of what we participate in. That it is the sum total of our thoughts, of our feelings, of our energy and our emotions that manifests. And our society, the environment, the world, this is our collective manifestation from our collective consciousness, our race consciousness, our group consciousness. And everything from our politics to the divide and the confusion and the uprising that's happening in this country, the symptoms that we see in the environment, all of it is a reflection, a perfect, absolutely clear reflection of each and every one of us. And anything that we see in the world, we are only able to see because it exists in us somewhere. And so we must be willing to speak to what we see, to look at ourselves and speak truth to ourselves, to be willing to explore the truth from within us and to look for those truths, to look for the possibilities that are in front of us, to look for the places where our participation, where our desire, where our creative energy can be of use, can be of service, can take our thoughts and our beliefs and turn them into something in the world. Ernest Holmes says we must treat and we must move our feet. And at this time in history, at this time in our nation, at this time in our culture, we must do both. We must treat. We must do our prayer work, our meditation, our inner work. We must speak, use the power of our word and of our trained thought in order to declare the truths that we know, in order to speak into existence the world that we want to see, in order to speak to the things in the world that we see that we would like to be different, that we would like to create in a new way. And take the example of Jesus, who was willing to look at something in front of him and say, "Get thee behind me. You have no power over me." I take this situation and I banish it to the back of my consciousness. I take this idea and I move it out of the realm of being, and I stand in its place, and I can declare a truth that is absolute. Every single one of us is connected to a power for good in the universe that is greater than we are. And in every moment, it is seeking to express through us, to be through us, to live, to evolve, and to move through, to speak through us. Every single one of us is a unique channel for the divine mind, for the divine heart, for the inspiration of love itself, to pour into this reality, to pour into this world, that each one of us can be a place where God shows up, that each one of us can be a place where the universe expresses its highest ideals and possibilities in form, in the active act of creation. But we have to be willing to speak into that creation. We have to be willing to stand up and engage in the conversations, especially in days like these, when the divide of otherness seems to be getting wider and wider and wider, and the gap of connection and the argument and the inability to see each other's opinion keeps becoming farther and farther and farther apart. That we as people of New Thought, that we as people who engage in spiritual living, that we must be the place that is willing to listen from a higher perspective. What would it be like if each of us chose to live and be and seek a perspective outside of opinion? That if in our prayers and in our meditation we could ask that we can rise to a higher space of possibility and perhaps be willing to look at someone or something who is expressing an idea that we don't understand, or that might be incredibly different from the values that we hold, and be willing to look for and ask deeply, what is it underneath there? What are the values that they are expressing? Is there some place where we can connect? Because if all we see is otherness in the world, if all we see are bickering opinions, if all we see are contradictory truths, then we cannot be a place of wholeness. What would it look like for each one of us to make it a spiritual practice to look for wholeness in the opposition, to look for the place of connection in places that seem separate? What would it be like for us to be people who engage in spiritual living in such a way that we live and breathe in a seeking of a higher possibility, and that we use our voice, we use our word, we engage in conversation even if those conversations are uncomfortable, and we listen to the voices that we disagree with, and we ask questions. We ask questions from a desire to understand, not to make wrong. Because the only way for us to heal, and the only way for us to heal the divide of otherness, is to look for the person, to look for the God, to look for the truth that lives and breathes in each person, and know that that same thing lives and breathes within each one of us, and that there is an opportunity, there is a possibility somewhere for us to find connection, for us to find the ability to see ourself in the other and to see the other in ourself. Because if we do believe that God is all there is, then it means that each one of us is that presence, that it lives and breathes us. And so no matter what otherness, no matter what false truths, no matter what strange reflections we may see in the world, we must be willing to look at least from whatever angle we can find it. We must be willing to look for that presence of God, for that presence of peace, for that presence of values, of connection, of evolution, of forward movement, because it exists in everyone. And if we use the power of our word, not only to declare the truths and the visions and the ideas and the possibilities that we are seeking and that we are looking for, but we can also use the power of our word to speak directly to the things that we see that need to be put behind us. We are living in a world that is the result of so much history that does not deserve a future. And that we must take much of our history and much of the structures that have come from that and unravel them and pull them apart and put them into the world behind us so that we can move towards a world that works for all, a world that is sustainable, a world that cares for life, a world that values everyone and everything as God. This is our duty, this is our calling, this is what's in front of us, my friends. We live in the most interesting of times. Deepak Chopra would remind us to be impeccable with our word. That our word creates. That our word is the way that we create new vibration. That our word is the way that the Spirit of the living God speaks itself into reality and into the world. So let us be impeccable with our word. Let us stand in the power of our truth, in the power of our denial, in our power of our willingness to speak into what we see. To recognize that the world in front of us and that all that we see is a reflection of that which is inside of us, and so to be willing to speak truth to ourselves and to point out the things that we need to look at and the things that we need to examine and the places in ourselves that we need to open up so that we can participate in the building and the creation of something new. Because, my friends, something wonderful is seeking to express here on planet Earth, and it is coming through each and every single one of us. And this process, this of awakening, this process of recreating, this process of reorganizing, this process is about bringing forth a world that works for everyone. And it's going to take each one of us looking deeply through the power of our minds and using the power of our word to speak our truth, even if our voice trembles, and to stand in our power and allow it to be the God, the universe, the creative process, evolution itself, to be the one who speaks through us. And so with that, I invite you to take a deep breath. And if it's comfortable, close your eyes as we move into a moment of prayer. And so right here and right now, I just claim, know, and declare that there is only one life, that this one life is infinite, that this one seamless presence is living and breathing throughout the entirety of the universe, and it is everyone and it is everything. That this one is moving across all of evolution throughout all of history, and it is emerging right here and right now as me. It is beating my heart, it is speaking through me. It is all that I am, and I am it. And as I recognize that I am the universe in miniature, that I am life and evolution expressing, I recognize that each person who is hearing these words is that self-same presence, recognizing itself right now. That there's only one of us here, and it is speaking and hearing through us as one. And so let us rise up as powerful creators, as those who speak our truth, as those who declare the world that we see, and the world that we want to see, the world that we must see. We speak to it, we create it, we give it birth, we give it our energy, we give it our life force, and we move into it with all that we are and all that we do. And so let us just be in gratitude and celebration and the awareness that something wonderful is truly rising up on planet Earth, and it is calling each one of us into a new place of participation so that a world that works for all may make itself known. And so let us surrender to that power for good in the universe that is greater than we are, and allow it to move us, allow it to move through us, allow ourselves to be moved by it, to give ourselves to it. And so we let it be, and so it is. Thank you, my friends.